So I mean, but if you get something that's halfway there, are you willing to work with that writer to like push it forward?
Sure, and and I've worked on a couple of projects like that in the past. My experience has been has kind of been run the gamut from working with a professional writer who took feedback and criticism, and then in table reads was like, oh yes, yes, you're right, yes, that's true, I need to change that. To other people that I've collaborated with here in Columbus, who maybe were so attached to the fact that they had written this thing, therefore it should not change, or their idea was the best, and not being open to input. So it's kind of run the gamut, you know. Right. But absolutely, I mean, you can have a great idea and turn that into a great script. Yeah. But when you have a bad script, right, typically the movie that gets made from that is not going to be stellar.
So on Savage, I mean, like, let's say, how many drafts do you think you guys went through before you went to the screen?
Well, we initially optioned the first script that we got in, and then it went through probably 3 rewrites before we actually shot it. And every movie or every script that we optioned and purchased went through a rewrite. So nothing that we got stayed the way it was when we purchased it. We did a rewrite on every single one of them. Even the ones that didn't get made, we did a rewrite on them, just because we knew that if we were going out pitching those scripts for money, that we wanted them to be ready when somebody said, well, let me see the script. So every single one of them went through a rewrite.
What do you think the percentage, how much of the original draft to the final shooting draft, if you said, you know, is it subtle polishes, or is it like, let's lift whole things out of it and change it?
Probably, I would say, after we got it, there was like a core good idea in there, and it probably changed a good 60 to 70%.
Okay.
From what we had.
So yeah, it's true. So many people think, wow, this is great. Here's, you know, I've done my own 3 draft. They hand it to you guys and say go, and you're like, oh, you're nowhere near done. Right. And it's hard. Wait a minute, I've worked, you know, a year and a half on this. It's like, no, you needed to not give it to your mother or your great aunt or whatever. You needed to give it to us.
Yeah.
Ben, talk about some script development.
Well, I mean, you know, and also to get some perspective, I think, especially if you're a writer, you know, and I'm a writer, and I think a lot of producers are, you know, you spend a lot of time with that one story, and so it's so refreshing to sort of be able to keep it for that time, but then cut it loose, let someone else take a look at it. And my experience with, you know, with the current project I'm on, 8 and 5, we structured it like a writer's room, like you would in television. And I worked in television for quite a while in sitcoms, and I always saw how that worked, but I'd never participated in one until this project. And I love it. It's probably one of the most freeing experiences you can have, because you write something, you know, and that's your draft, but you don't, you know, you do your pass, and you're committed to your pass, and then you throw it, you know, to the writer's room, to people like Vitis or other people, and then they'll come back with pages of notes that you vehemently argue for and against, and, you know, sometimes you win, and a lot of times you lose, and you're sitting there going, oh, that's right, you're right. You know, we just had a meeting on Thursday where that whole process happened, and I thought I had handed off this perfect draft that would never be touched, and he came back with, like, you know, 10 pages of notes. And I'm like, oh, you're right.
On a one-page script.
That does sound a little. That does sound like Airplane. So, so we do have to, you know, I think that's just a natural part of that process, and it's solely about, you know, kind of getting rid of your own subjectivity, which is good. You need that when you start a process, because only you can tell that story and tell it from your perspective. But then you're not the audience. You have an audience that you're expecting to experience your story. So you need to get that objectivity onto your work.
Yeah, ultimately, you know, the script is, I know several writers who say, oh, it's just obvious. It's like, no, it's obvious to you. You've jumped from A to Z. Where are the other steps? You know, it's like, that's where you need the feedback, and you have to listen to people.